one phone call, and your abusive ex becomes a missing person. No body, no evidence, just gone. That's the terrifying offer a billionaire mafia boss casually makes to his data entry clerk. She has been living in constant fear, hiding her cracked ribs from a violent stalker. The police are too slow, and the restraining orders don't work. But the underworld operates on permanent solutions. Now this desperate mother has to make an impossible choice: let the law fail her, or let a monster kill for her. Let me paint a picture for you guys. A ruthless mafia boss does not handle job interviews, ever, but here we are. The rain is absolutely pouring down on downtown Hartford, and our main guy, Kyle, is sitting across from a terrified young woman. She is wearing cheap clothes like they are a suit of armor. Kyle is the head of a massive underground empire, built on pure silence and taking out his enemies. He is sitting there while his right-hand man, Dante, throws away resumes like literal garbage. But then Celine's sleeve slips. Kyle spots dark purple fingerprints wrapped right around her wrist. Something dark and violent wakes up inside him. He hires her right on the spot. Stick with me here. Because what he does not know is that saving her is going to flip his entire criminal empire completely upside down. Dante is super annoyed, sliding her thin folder across the table and complaining that she is 20 minutes late. Kyle is not even looking up. He has a massive criminal syndicate to run. He has to reroute illegal shipments at the docks and remind a local politician that loyalty is absolutely mandatory. So why is the big boss sitting in on a low-level corporate interview? Because he needed to look legitimate for a day. But let us be real. His massive company is just a shiny front. Underneath all those boring quarterly reports is a brutal network built on fear. Suddenly the door opens. Celine walks in looking like she is bracing for a literal punch to the face. She is maybe 23 or 24 years old. With her dark hair pulled back so tight, it actually looks painful. You can tell right away that Celine is struggling. She is wearing a huge white shirt that looks like she grabbed it from someone twice her size. And her cheap black pants are stitched by hand. But Kyle is not looking at her clothes. He is staring straight at her hands, and they are shaking uncontrollably. This is not the nervous energy of someone wanting a job. This is pure fear. Dante does not even look up. He just acts cold, reading her file and pointing out that she dropped out of college after only 2 semesters when he asks her why. She takes just a half-second too long to answer. She claims it was for financial reasons, but her voice is way too rehearsed. Kyle knows instantly that she is lying straight through her teeth. Our boy Kyle is a mafia don. He spots a lie faster than he spots a loaded gun. He knows this girl is not just broke. She is running from something terrifying. Dante keeps grilling her, calling her work history weak since she has only done waitressing and basic retail. Celine clenches her jaw, and for a second, Kyle thinks she is going to just walk right out of the room. But instead, she lifts her chin and stares Dante down with this absolute boss energy. She tells him she deserves the job because she shows up. She never complains, and she gets the work done. Dante tries to shoot her down, saying that is just basic competence. Celine stares right back and tells him to let her prove it. The whole room goes totally silent. Most hardened criminals wilt under Kyle, but she holds his gaze. Kyle cuts through the tension with a voice like a literal blade, asking why she really wants this job. Celine flinches just a tiny bit, her knuckles turning bright white. She drops the corporate act entirely and whispers that she simply needs it. It is pure survival mode. Dante is already shaking his head, giving her the classic rejection line. Celine stands up fast, her hands still shaking as she grabs her bag. But right then, her sleeve slides up. Kyle freezes. He sees the ugly purple and yellow bruises shaped exactly like a man's fingers, wrapped tight around her wrist. She yanks her sleeve down, but it is too late as she turns away, moving stiffly like someone with broken ribs. Kyle stands up. He looks her dead in the eye and tells her she starts work on Monday morning. Dante is absolutely shocked. Celine looks at him like he is crazy, pure suspicion replacing the tiny spark of hope on her face. She asks him why, but Kyle keeps his mouth shut. He cannot exactly admit that he recognizes that specific terror in her eyes, because he watched his own mother suffer through the exact same thing. He just tells her to be on time. She gives a stiff nod and gets out of there before he changes his mind. Once the door clicks shut, Dante absolutely loses it. He demands to know what his boss is thinking, complaining that bringing damaged goods into the company is a massive liability. Kyle gives him a look so cold it could freeze fire, warning him to never call her that again. Dante backs off, but he warns Kyle that this girl is carrying way too much chaotic baggage. The crazy part is, Dante is completely right. That chaos is exactly why Kyle is already obsessed with protecting her. Later that evening, Celine heads back to her awful apartment in the worst part of town. This building is a literal nightmare. With flickering lights and doors covered in deadbolts, she walks in carrying heavy grocery bags. And the place is dark except for a television screen. Her little boy, Noah, is sitting on the broken couch, staring blankly at cartoons. She asks if he has eaten, but the poor kid is completely silent. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echo from the bedroom. Celine's entire body goes rigid. Her husband, Damon, steps into the living room. He is a big guy, but not the good kind. He has bloodshot eyes and fists that are constantly clenched, even when he is just standing there doing absolutely nothing. Damon glares at her and demands to know where she has been. Celine tries to keep her voice perfectly steady, reminding him she had that job interview. Damon does not care. He stomps across the room, smelling like cheap beer, trapping her against the counter. He yells at her for leaving him alone with her own son. When he complains about Noah, he grabs Celine by the chin, squeezing hard enough to leave fresh marks. He tells her not to get smart with him. Most people would fight back, but Celine just takes it. She learned the hard way that fighting only makes this monster hit her harder. She just whispers a quiet apology. This is a tough lesson, guys. Sometimes the scariest monsters do not hide in the shadows. They live right inside your own house, demanding you serve them. The crazy part is how fast Damon switches up. Once she submits, he loosens his grip, rubs her jaw, and plays the victim, saying he just gets scared when she is gone too long. Total emotional manipulation. Fast forward to Monday morning, and it is freezing outside. Celine is standing in front of the massive Varley Holdings building, having left her apartment at 5:30 just to be safe. She kissed her son while that absolute trash bag Damon was still snoring. She is wearing the exact same cheap clothes, but she added a thin sweater to hide her bruises. The lobby is packed with scary guards in expensive suits who look way more like mafia hitmen than regular security. Celine walks up super carefully, clutching the paperwork she needs to start her brand new, very dangerous life. Look at this setup. Celine walks in on day one, and the vibes are instantly freezing. The guard checks her ID and hands over a key card like it is a cursed artifact. On the 14th floor, she meets Margaret, a manager who looks like she eats nails for breakfast. Margaret drags Celine on a brutal speed run across 3 terrifying floors. Firing off insane security rules, they finally hit a tiny, dead-end office. Margaret shoves a giant binder into Celine's hands with a death glare. She warns her not to mess this up, because the big boss, Mr. Varley, never hires anyone personally. Whatever magic Celine pulled, she better deliver. You and I both know that sometimes in life, getting what you asked for is scarier than being left out in the cold. Celine stands in this cramped office, feeling a spark of actual hope. But here is the wild part. The boss, Kyle, does not see her for 3 whole weeks. He is handling shady underworld deals upstairs, but do not get it twisted. He is watching her every night. He boots up his private terminal to check her footage. He sees her arrive early, eat alone, and clock out at 5:01 p.m. sharp then. The massive red flags start dropping. A fresh bruise poorly hidden by makeup. Long sleeves in a boiling office. A limp she desperately tries to hide. Kyle instantly recognizes the pattern. It is the exact nightmare his mother suffered through 20 years ago, before his father paid the price. The truth is, trauma always leaves a fingerprint if you know where to look. Picture this setup, guys. Big boss Kyle slides into Margaret's office, casually asking about the new girl. Margaret instantly clocks the vibe. She drops the stats. Celine's competent but has rock-solid boundaries, bailing exactly at 5 p.m. 0 overtime. Margaret tries to pry, asking if she should keep tabs on her, but Kyle shuts it down cold and bounces. But here's the massive plot twist. Celine's absolutely drowning. For 6 straight weeks, she's been slapping on a fake smile, pushing through her shifts with cracked ribs and busted lips. You and I both know the real lesson here. The folks smiling the brightest in the office are usually fighting the absolute darkest battles behind closed doors. You literally never know what a person goes home to. Brace yourselves for this nightmare. Celine goes home to Damien, a ticking time bomb of toxic chaos, one morning. Her 4-year-old son Noah spills some juice. A normal kid mistake, right, but Damien's already drinking. He unleashes a brutal slap that sends poor Noah flying headfirst into the metal fridge handle. Blood is everywhere. Celine goes full mama bear, snatching her boy and locking them in the bathroom while Damien loses his mind, hammering on the door for 10 minutes, screaming about raising a weak kid. Life teaches us a brutal truth in moments like this. Real weakness is a grown man taking his anger out on a defenseless child. True strength is a terrified mother doing whatever it takes to shield her baby from the absolute worst kind of monster. Damien finally backs off, leaving Celine on that cold bathroom floor. And guys, this is the exact second her mindset flips. For 4 years. She swallowed his twisted garbage about love and endured the abuse. But seeing her boy bleeding, that shatters the illusion. She realizes if she stays, Noah will grow up thinking real men use fists. Here's the undeniable reality check. Sometimes you can't find the courage to save yourself, but fierce love for your child makes you do the impossible. Fast forward to her shift at the office. Celine's a total zombie, messing up files, completely zoned out then, at exactly 4:47 p.m. The heavy hitter enters the chat. Boss man Kyle knocks on her door, standing there looking like a complete mystery, about to flip the entire script. Celine panics and jumps up, stumbling over apologies. Kyle just shuts the door and hits her with that boss-level stare. He doesn't ask. He straight up drops the hammer. He tells her she's hurt. Celine tries to play it off, relying on that classic survival reflex. But Kyle isn't having it. He calls out her lie instantly. Someone's hurting you. You can literally feel the tension. She tries to say she can handle it, but he pushes harder, asking if it's her boyfriend. Celine breaks down, her silence saying everything. This is where Kyle goes from a cold mafia don to a dude desperately trying to hold his rage together. He looks at her and simply says, "I can help." It's a powerful reminder. Life sends you an unexpected protector, exactly when you finally decide you're done being a victim. When Kyle confronts her, Celine panics. She snaps that he cannot get involved. Terrified of what her abuser might do, she lies, claiming she just had a rough morning, and bolts from the room. Kyle just watches her go, for the first time in 20 years. This unstoppable mafia don feels entirely powerless. Later, Kyle sits in his penthouse staring at a manila folder. His right-hand man pulled everything on Celine's boyfriend. "Bro, get a load of this absolute garbage fire of a husband, Damien." From the outside, total gentleman, buys the drinks, charms the crowd. Behind closed doors, a walking nightmare now. Kale is watching all this, and his right-hand man Dante is literally begging to take Damien out. 3 words, and Damien is swimming with the fishes. But Kale uses his brain. He looks at Celine and sees pure panic. If he goes full mafia boss right now, she is bolting. So instead of choosing violence, Kale chooses strategy. He hits up his lawyers and fixers, building an invisible fortress for her. Listen, sometimes the smartest move is just waiting for the right moment to strike. 3 whole weeks go by. For 3 straight weeks you can see Celine slowly getting her spine back, eating with her coworkers, standing a little taller. But just when you think things are chilling out, boom, 2:17 in the morning, Kale's phone lights up, unknown number. He picks up, and it is Celine, absolutely terrified. She is hiding in the bathroom, whispering that she has to go. Why? Because the garbage husband hurt her kid. Noah, there is blood involved, look. As soon as kids get dragged into the mess, the game changes completely. Kale goes from 0 to absolute mob boss mode in a split second. His voice goes ice cold, telling her a car is pulling up in exactly 8 minutes. Grab the documents, grab nothing else, and get ready to run. Stick with me. This is where it gets crazy. Celine is having a total panic attack. What if Damien wakes up? Kale cuts right through the noise like a legend. "Do you trust me?" Boom, the call ends, and Kale is instantly barking orders at Dante. "Send a car to East Hartford. Get them to the safe house. No questions asked." Kale grabs his piece and heads out the door. The man spent 20 years building an underground empire, and he is risking it all right now. Meanwhile, Celine is shaking in her bathroom with her kid, packing birth certificates and $57 she hid in a tampon box. Listen, if you ever find yourself hiding cash just to survive, you need to get out immediately. That is the real-life lesson here. Right outside that thin bathroom door, Damien is snoring like a freight train, completely passed out drunk, but Celine knows better. This dude is a total psycho. He has this creepy radar for her every move. She already knows what is going to happen. The second he wakes up and sees her gone, he is going to snap. He will blow up her phone 17 times, harass her mom, and play the victim. But then she looks down at her boy. Noah is bleeding, and that completely flips the script. When someone threatens your family, all the fear just burns away. She shuts off the shower, and the silence in that apartment is absolutely deafening. She opens the door, moving like a ninja through a minefield, stepping into the dark living room lit only by the TV. This scene is so tense I literally forgot to breathe. She is sneaking past the bed. Damien is just lying there in the dark. She takes a step, another step, and then crack. The floorboard squeaks, Damien actually mumbles something and shifts in the bed. Guys. My heart was jumping out of my chest watching this. Celine freezes completely. Noah is clinging to her neck for dear life. For 5 agonizing seconds, nobody moves, then the absolute idiot rolls over and faces the wall. Celine does not waste another second. She bolts across the living room in 8 silent steps, grabs her coat, and unlocks the front door. Her hands are shaking out of control. She hits the empty hallway, smelling burnt dinner, and she does not look back at the life she is leaving. She is officially leaving her whole toxic life in the dust. She steps out into the freezing December air, and there is this pitch-black sedan waiting at the curb. Out steps Marco. This guy is built like an absolute tank, wearing a tailored suit in a rundown neighborhood. You can just tell he is used to breaking bones for a living. He tells her to get in, and Celine hesitates. I mean, she is basically running from her insane husband straight into a mafia getaway car. But Marco actually has a heart. He sees the kid is bleeding and suggests a hospital. Celine immediately shoots that down. No hospitals, too many questions. Marco gets it right away. He tells her they have an underground doctor waiting. Celine finally climbs in and shuts the door. The driver slams the gas, and they are out of there. Celine watches her awful apartment building vanish into the night. But here is the crazy part. She does not feel relieved at all. She is just totally terrified about what happens next. They pull up to this safe house on Laurel Street. From the outside, it looks like an abandoned laundromat, straight up garbage. But the second they walk inside, it is like a luxury bunker, clean furniture, the heat is blasting, blackout curtains everywhere. Standing in the kitchen is Dr. Sarah Lim, looking totally unfazed by this middle-of-the-night mafia taxi service. She tells Celine to bring the kid over. Noah is completely silent, just shut down from the trauma, which is honestly heartbreaking to see. Dr. Lim is a total professional. She checks the kid out and says it is not too deep, just a mild concussion. Then she looks right at Celine. Seeing the bruises Celine is trying to hide, and asks how she is doing. Celine gets totally defensive and snaps that she is fine. The doctor knows she is lying but lets it slide. She tells Celine there is food, clothes, and that she can stay as long as she wants. Celine obviously does not buy it for a second, because in her world, nobody does anything for free. But then, an hour later, the door unlocks. Celine goes into full panic mode again, thinking Damien tracked them down, but it is not the crazy husband, it is Kale. The mafia boss himself just walked through the door. Kale steps into the room, and he looks completely different. The suit jacket is gone, his sleeves are rolled up, and he is giving off massive boss energy. But his eyes are still razor sharp, picking up every little detail she is trying to hide. The doctor gives him the quick update on the kid and then dips out, leaving them completely alone. Celine is just staring at him, totally mind-blown. She finally asks the golden question, "Why are you doing this?" Kale sits down, giving her space, and drops the hardest line. "Because you needed help." Celine is not stupid, though. She knows guys like him always have a hidden agenda. She asks him what he really wants. Kale just looks right into her eyes and says, "I want you safe." The tension is unreal. Let's unpack this together, guys. Kyle drops his icy boss mask, leans in, and gets incredibly real. He tells Celine his mom spent 15 years with a guy who shattered her bones and called it love. When she finally bailed, she was a total ghost. Dying 3 years later, docs claimed heart attack, but Kyle knows pure fear flatlined her. He was 17 and swore he'd never let that happen again. Boom, that's why he's backing Celine, no strings attached. Celine is so shocked she starts crying right on her kid's head, whispering she doesn't know what to do. Kyle just looks at her and says, "You already did it, you left, life lesson time. True strength isn't about never being scared. It's about walking out that door, even when you are completely terrified." Honestly, Kyle's total confidence should be calming, but it totally freaks Celine out. Why? Because after 4 years with a toxic guy, she knows men who promise protection usually just want control under a different name. She asks what's next, and Kyle lays out the master plan. Sleep, lawyer, restraining order, custody. He swears Damien won't find them, and his voice gets extremely cold like full-on mafia absolute. Celine wants to argue that her ex is a relentless psycho who sees her as his literal property, but she is just way too exhausted. She nods. Kyle tells her she did the right thing, even if it feels horrible right now. He dips, leaving Marco on guard. Celine holds her sleeping boy, trying to believe him. The simple life lesson today. Doing the right thing rarely feels good in the moment. Sometimes it just feels like survival. Cut to 6:43 in the morning. Damien wakes up to an empty apartment. He wanders into the kitchen for coffee. finding only dirty dishes and massive silence. He checks the bedroom and no S room, empty. Then he spots the closet, clothes, shoes, and her hidden canvas bag. Gone, absolute panic hits him. He dials her number with shaking hands, but it goes straight to voicemail. He leaves a desperate message, then tries again, nothing. Cold reality sets in as he frantically searches for clues. Her toothbrush, the stuffed rabbit, her cheap makeup all gone. He completely loses his mind and punches the wall hard enough to split his knuckles open. Remember this life lesson, everybody. You never appreciate what you really have until it's gone, especially when you treated it like absolute garbage. This guy is fully losing his mind right now. He actually calls her mom, Linda. He asks if Celine is there, and Linda straight up hits him with, "Why would she be here, see?" Damien isolated Celine so poorly that even her own mom hasn't talked to her in 2 months. Huge red flag, guys. When he says he won't tell her if Celine calls. Linda just hangs up on him savage. Damien is hyperventilating, trying to calculate who helped Celine escape, thinking she is too dumb to do it alone. He stalks her email since he never let her have a password, and spots a message from Varley Holdings. Her new job. He remembers how hopeful she looked after that interview. He grabs his keys, ready to ruin it. Here's a quick life lesson for you. When you try to cage someone, you only teach them how to desperately search for the key. So at 9:15 in the morning, Damien rolls up to Varley Holdings wearing his best jeans and a shirt Celine literally ironed for him. The absolute nerve of this guy. He walks to the security desk and demands to see his girlfriend. The guard is totally unfazed, asks for ID, and makes a quick call. He hits Damien with a flat, "She's not available." Damien tries to play the "it's about our son" card, hoping to manipulate the situation. The guard makes another call, and this time his face hardens up completely. He tells Damien she isn't in the office and orders him to leave right away. Damien is raging, his fists clenching up, screaming that he knows she's up there. But the guard isn't playing around. Take away this life lesson. Boundaries are your absolute best defense. When someone shows you who they are, you put up a wall and never let them cross it. Stick with me, this is where the tension spikes. The guard straight up threatens to call the cops. For a split second, Damien thinks about going full psycho and forcing his way up, but he bails. He's out on the sidewalk, glaring at the glass tower, boiling with rage. Meanwhile, up on the 14th floor, Margaret Chen is chewing Kyle out. She tells him the boyfriend just showed up. Kyle doesn't even blink. He orders security beefed up and wants Damien's photo everywhere. Margaret asks what they are doing, running a business or a witness protection program. Kyle coldly says, "Both. This is straight up boss energy. Protecting his people at all costs. Let me share a simple life lesson here. True leaders don't just manage their team, they fiercely protect them. When you have the power to shield someone from harm, you step up." Margaret is absolutely not having it. She warns Kyle that guys like Damien don't just walk away, and this is a highly dangerous game. Kyle's just like, "Watch me," she brings up his mom, saying she'd hate this. But Kyle ice-coldly replies his mom would understand exactly why he's doing it. Margaret leaves, telling him not to cry when it blows up. Kyle just pulls up the lobby security cam. He watches Damien pace outside for 12 minutes like a total maniac before peeling off in a busted pickup. Kyle instantly grabs the license plate. He dials Dante and orders full 24-hour surveillance on Damien. He wants every single move tracked. Dante warns him he's getting way too personally involved. Life lesson time, guys. Sometimes you have to break the standard rules to do the right thing, even if it means stepping into the line of fire yourself. Dante calls him out immediately. He says, "You re-protecting a woman, not an asset." Kyle just grits his teeth and tells him to do it. Dante sighs and says it won't end clean. Meanwhile, Celine is practically crawling out of her skin at the safe house. Every single footstep or car door makes her jump. She's sleeping in 2-hour shifts, completely paranoid. Dr. Lim checks on little Noah, and physically the kid is healing fine, but mentally total lockdown. He stopped talking, won't eat unless Celine feeds him, and panics if she leaves his sight for a second. The doctor calls it trauma regression and says it takes time. Celine just feels like she absolutely failed her boy. A very real life lesson here. Healing from trauma isn't a straight line. It is incredibly messy. It takes immense patience, and you have to forgive yourself along the way. We're about to uncover how she finally fights back. On day 4, Patricia the lawyer kicks down the door. Okay, not literally, but she has massive shark energy. She's in her 50s, unimpressed by everything and bills by the minute. She's there for the restraining order and needs the ugly details. She asks Celine when the nightmare started. Celine, clutching a cold coffee, whispers, 4 years ago. She explains it started with just yelling and punching walls, then escalated to him bruising her arm. Celine admits she kept trying to convince herself it was all just an accident. Patricia just writes it all down, totally cold, and asks about physical and sexual violence. Celine completely chokes up. Important life lesson, everybody, never ignore the tiny red flags. What starts as a punched wall almost always turns into a totally shattered life. Let's kick this off, guys. Lawyer Patricia asks Celine why she never reported the monster she lived with. Celine says he convinced her no one would believe her, and she thought she could fix him. Listen, you and I know you can never fix a toxic person. Walking away is the only real victory. Patricia just writes down every horrific detail, the shattered ribs, the black eyes. That freezing January night he locked her out in the snow. 2 brutal hours later, the lawyer snaps her briefcase shut. She is filing a restraining order and an emergency custody petition at dawn. The law is on their side, but Patricia drops a terrifying reality check. A control freak like Damien will not just roll over. He will absolutely violate that order. Patricia warns that Damien will crash her workplace and brainwash her family. The life lesson here is simple. Leaving a toxic trap is hard, but staying gone is the true test of willpower. Guess what? It only takes 7 hours for him to ignore the law. At 11:34 at night, Celine is hiding in bed when her phone lights up with her nightmare's name. The phone rings endlessly until voicemails pour in. He cycles through every manipulative phase in the book. First, playing the confused victim, begging her to return, then accusing her of kidnapping. Finally, the mask slips and he is screaming, swearing to hunt her down. 17 missed calls in 90 minutes. It is a masterclass in toxic emotional whiplash, leaving Celine totally sick to her stomach. On call 18, she snaps and picks up, demanding he leave her alone. Damien plays his pathetic act, begging for forgiveness. Celine drops the hammer, telling him she knows he hurt their son. The coward denies it, claiming the kid just fell. He tries to overwrite her memory, telling her she is crazy, but she shuts that gaslighting down. Then comes the terrifying plot twist. Damien laughs and asks where she learned that word, her lawyer. Or maybe her boss. Boom, Celine's heart drops. How does he know about her boss? Damien sneers, proving he is a stalker. He knows a heavy hitter like Kyle would never help a random woman for free. He disgustingly accuses her of sleeping with him for protection. Celine immediately hangs up the phone. The sheer audacity of this villain is unbelievable. Her hands tremble so much that her phone crashes to the floor, shattering the screen. She pulls her crying son close, whispering everything is fine. But we know it is a lie. Damien knowing about Kyle means the stalker is watching her. Cut to 7 in the morning the next day. Kyle rolls up to the safe house bringing breakfast. Celine opens the door looking wrecked, having not slept a wink. She drops the bomb that Damien called and Kyle's aura turns freezing cold. He asks why she answered 17 calls. She admits it was the only way to make the ringing stop, then repeats the sick conversation. When Damien dropping Kyle's name is mentioned, the mob boss's jaw locks. He realizes the ex is fishing for intel. Damien wants to hunt down her protector to destroy them next. Celine snaps, asking if he is just here to protect his investment. She is exhausted from being treated like a charity project. Stick with me, because this is where it gets interesting. Kyle stares at her, and we finally get his backstory. He reveals his own mother was trapped with an abusive monster for 15 years. Neighbors heard the screaming, but nobody stepped up. Kyle was 7 when he first tried to protect his mom. His father shattered 3 of his ribs, claiming real men mind their own business. By the time Kyle got strong enough to fight back, his mother's spirit was already destroyed. She officially died of heart failure at 20. But Kyle knows the truth. The terror of living in that house is what actually ended her life. This heavy confession changes everything. Kyle looks into her eyes and drops the hardest line of the series. He says she is not a project. She is the second chance he never got to give his own mother. Celine is holding back tears. Kyle's only demand: just stay alive. Peace never lasts in these stories, though. The restraining order only works for 4 days. By day 5, the crazy ex tracks down Celine's mother. Linda, he shows up on her porch looking completely unhinged. Linda has not seen this loser in months since she used to ask too many questions about her daughter's bruises. Damien tries his usual manipulation, crying that he wants to see his son while playing the victim. Mama Bear Linda is not having it. She flat out tells him she knows exactly what he did to her daughter. Damien actually flinches like he just took a bullet to the chest. Picture this, the guy is standing there, eyes completely red, playing the ultimate broken man. But you and I both know that is pure cap. Stick with me, because we are unpacking this massive drama together. The second his mask slipped, he turned icy. He claimed Celine was just a master manipulator playing the victim card. He threatened her mom with a classic toxic flex. When she comes crawling back, do not act surprised. Total psycho energy. Her mom panicked, begging Celine not to fall for his lies again. Celine swore she wouldn't go back, but deep down she was terrified she might. Here is a simple truth. Toxic people always bank on your forgiveness. The clock was officially ticking toward a brutal custody showdown. For 6 weeks, Celine locked down in a safe house, working for the absolute powerhouses at Vril Holdings, a syndicate you do not want to cross. But Damien was on an unhinged campaign to drag her back. Full stalker mode, he sent flowers, made burner accounts, and pulled up to the daycare. He blew up Vril Holdings 17 times, until Kyle, an absolute boss, stepped up. Kyle delivered a warning so cold that Damien never called again. But the mind games worked. Celine started gaslighting herself, wondering if he had actually changed. That is the crazy thing about trauma, guys. It rewrites your memories until straight-up abuse starts looking like love. The lesson here: never let loneliness trick you back into a toxic cycle. Absolutely terrifying. Her therapist straight-up called it traumatic bonding. Her brain was wired to associate this absolute monster with survival. You do not just shake off 4 years of intense conditioning. Celine felt like she was going through literal withdrawals, wondering if she was the real villain. The doc brought the facts. Did he hit you? Yes. Choke you? Yes. You are traumatized. But logic does not always win the battle. Late at night, she would type desperate texts to Damien, nearly hitting send. She wanted to cave, which terrified her. The truth is, healing is never a straight line. Sometimes it is just resisting a bad text. 3 days before the court battle, Kyle catches her sitting in the dark at 2 a.m, totally zoned out. Kyle sits across from her, keeping it super respectful, and asks if she wants to vent. Celine cracks, admitting she is stuck thinking about the good times, the fake tears, the apologies. She sobs, saying it was not all bad. Kyle drops absolute truth bombs. He tells her abusers feed you just enough good to make you doubt the nightmare. How does he know? He watched his own dad pull the exact same scam on his mom for 15 long years. She fell for it every time because she desperately wanted to believe the lie. Celine wipes her tears, terrified of being weak. Kyle shuts that down, reminding her she is just human. We all have weak moments, but recognizing them is where your true power lies. She confesses she almost called Damien. When she admits she wanted to go home, the tension spikes. Kyle leans in, dead serious, delivering a brutal reality check like a true enforcer. He tells her straight up, if you go, will end you. Maybe not today, but eventually a hit will land wrong. Kyle explains that trauma brainwashes you into focusing on fake apologies instead of real violence. The apologies are just intermissions. He drops a massive bombshell. He gave this exact speech to his mom 3 weeks before she passed away. She didn't listen. Kyle looks Celine in the eye and says, "Do not be sorry, just be alive." That is a solid life lesson for us all. Sometimes survival literally means burning the bridge completely. She begs Kyle to take her phone and delete Damien's number. She admits she does not trust herself, so Kyle takes the phone and nukes Damien from her contacts. Boom, gone. Fast forward to the massive custody hearing. The vibe is freezing and ruthless. Celine is outside the courthouse in a borrowed blazer. Her powerhouse lawyer, Patricia, runs the game plan, keep it factual, zero emotion. The judge only cares about cold facts. Celine is terrified of freezing up. They step inside this intense building, and you and I both know the tension is peaking then. The ultimate jump scare. Damien is standing right there in a slick new suit, looking exactly like the safe guy she fell for years ago. But remember, appearances are just a mask for true intentions. He is fully prepared to play the absolute victim. The second their eyes lock, Celine's heart rate goes through the roof. Her instincts scream at her to run straight back into his arms. Damien flashes a smile that looks incredibly genuine, like the last 4 years of hell never happened. She is totally tempted to buy the fantasy. But then, the ultimate reality check hits. She remembers the blood on her son's face, snapping her right out of it. She walks past him like an absolute boss. Inside, they face a tough-as-nails judge. Celine's lawyer goes straight for the throat with medical records, brutal photos, and an unhinged voicemail of Damien throwing threats. Damien's rookie lawyer tries to flip the script, claiming Celine faked the abuse. The lesson: the truth is always your best armor. The judge is stone-faced and calls Celine to the witness stand. Celine steps up, legs shaking, swears on the Bible, and braces for impact. Patricia kicks off the questioning, asking about the relationship. Then she goes for the heavy hitters. Did he physically harm you? Celine swallows her fear and lists off an absolute nightmare getting punched, choked, and having her ribs snapped twice. She admits Damien lied to the doctors, and she was way too terrified to correct them. Then comes the devastating blow. Patricia asks about the night she finally escaped. Celine reveals that Damien pushed their little boy, cracking his head until he bled sometimes. Hitting rock bottom gives you the strength to finally walk away. Absolute domination. Now it is Damien's lawyer's turn, trying the slimiest tactic ever. He weaponizes her mental health, asking if her anxiety made her hallucinate the abuse. Absolute garbage. Patricia screams objection. The lawyer keeps pushing, trying to prove Celine was never locked inside. Celine fires right back, explaining Damien took her keys and monitored her entire existence. When the lawyer smugly says she could have left, Celine goes full alpha. She leans in and asks this rookie if he has ever had to calculate if running would get him killed faster than staying. We are unpacking the truth today. She tells the room she stayed thinking it was safer, and she was wrong. Never let fear dictate your fate. The courtroom goes dead silent. The real vendetta is just beginning. In the courtroom, the judge drops the hammer. Celine gets temporary sole custody, while Damien gets a pathetic 2 hours of supervised visits. The gavel hits, and Celine finally scores a win. But as she tries to leave, Damien blocks the aisle. He steps into her personal space, triggering her survival instincts. He leans in and whispers that this is not over. Before he finishes his villain speech, a heavy hand clamps down on his shoulder. It is Kyle Varley, looking like the absolute Grim Reaper. Kyle calmly tells the ex that it is over. The tension is suffocating. Damien tries to act tough, telling Kyle to step aside, but he is completely outmatched. The abuser's fake confidence shatters against Kyle's terrifying mob boss aura, forcing Damien to back down humiliated. Kyle guides Celine out of the building, leaving Damien fuming. The look in the ex's eyes is pure, toxic obsession that night. Celine is back at the safe house, staring at her winning court documents. She should be celebrating, but feels like she is suffocating. Her phone buzzes with an unknown number. Against common sense, she picks it up. It is Damien. He mocks her, asking if she thinks some mafia boss can keep her safe. He promises to prove she belongs to him forever, then hangs up. Celine is left paralyzed in the dark. She realizes the brutal life lesson we discussed earlier. Leaving was just the warm-up phase. Surviving his revenge is the real boss fight. She spends the night wide awake on the couch, terrified of what this lunatic will do next while her son sleeps. Every passing car makes her jump. Every creak in the floorboard spikes her heart rate. Damien's whisper plays on a loop in her brain. At 4:17 in the morning, she calls Kyle. He answers instantly. She explains the terrifying threat, and Kyle does not hesitate. He is already on his way. You and I must look at this and decide, is this just business, or is he in full protector mode? 20 minutes later, Kyle bursts through the door with his enforcer. He sweeps the apartment like a tactical unit, ensuring the ex is not hiding anywhere. He demands every detail of the call. The second she finishes, Kyle calls his tech guy. He orders a full trace on that burner phone immediately. Kyle is done playing defense. It is time for the mob boss to hunt this stalker down. Let's jump right into this absolute madness, guys. Celine asks if Kyle can pull this off, and he drops the hardest line: I can do a lot of things. Boom. He immediately orders double security, demanding eyes on every door 24/7. Celine is terrified, realizing her ex will not stop. Kyle does not sugarcoat it. He promises to wait for a mistake and absolutely destroy him. 3 days later, the idiot slips up. Dante bursts into the office and slams a laptop down. He pulls up footage from a dingy gas station in East Hartford. It is grainy, but there he is. Filling up a busted truck, the camera catches his face for exactly 3 seconds. But that is all they need. It is Damien Cross. The lesson here is simple. Patience pays off. When dealing with toxic people, let them make the first mistake. Damien is leaving a sloppy paper trail. Dante reveals the guy used a stolen credit card. He bought booze and checked into the Starlight Inn, paying cash for a week like a cheap movie villain. The motel is a total dump, flickering neon, the kind of place that charges by the hour. The worst part, it is barely 4 miles from the safe house. Kyle realizes Damien is actively hunting them. Dante hacks the truck GPS and shows a map covered in red pins. Damien is circling Kyle's penthouse and women's shelters, running a systematic grid search. If he is smart, he finds them in a week. If he is lucky, maybe tomorrow. Life lesson for you: never underestimate a desperate person. Desperation makes people hyper-focused, so you always need to stay one step ahead. Kyle is done playing games. He buttons his jacket and orders full surveillance on the motel. Dante warns him that desperate men are dangerously unpredictable, but Kyle insists they just need to be ready later. Kyle visits the safe house and sees a completely different scene. Celine is patiently teaching her little boy how to tie his shoes. When the kid finally ties a messy knot, his pure joy makes our ruthless boss feel a rare spark of empathy. But the moment the boy spots Kyle, he freezes in absolute terror and instantly hides behind his mom. Celine gently tries to introduce Kyle as a friend. The life lesson here is simple. Real strength is not just about having the power to destroy your enemies. It is knowing exactly how to be soft and patient with the innocent people who rely on your protection. Kyle handles the terrified kid perfectly. He crouches down to look less threatening, knowing trauma takes time. Celine instantly clocks his serious vibe. They get the doctor to distract the kid with a puzzle so they can talk. Once the door shuts, Kyle drops the massive bomb. He exposes the shady motel and the systematic grid search. You can literally see the blood drain from her face as she realizes her psycho ex is closing in fast. Kyle immediately suggests relocating them out of state, where Damien can never reach them, but Celine aggressively rejects the idea, completely shutting it down. Here is a huge life lesson. You can never outrun your problems forever. Hiding might feel safe temporarily, but constantly running only exhausts you. Eventually, you just have to plant your feet and face the storm. Celine refuses to pack up her life. She has a job, her kid has therapy, and she will not spend forever looking over her shoulder. She breaks down, completely desperate, admitting she has no idea how to protect her son anymore. This is where the script flips. Kyle steps close, drops his voice, and offers the ultimate underworld solution. He asks if she wants him to make Damien disappear. One phone call, no body, no evidence. Celine is horrified, calling it outright murder. Kyle coldly corrects her, it is protection. She cries that she cannot ask him to do that. And Kyle drops the hardest line. You are not asking, I am offering. Here is a harsh life lesson. Sometimes survival means crossing lines you swore you never would. When the system completely fails to protect your family, you have to decide what your peace is truly worth. Picture this, Celine asks why a mafia boss is risking everything for her. Kale goes dead silent. The tension is insane. Then he drops a heavy truth bomb. He tells her if he had this power at 17, his own father would not have made it to 18, and his mom would still be breathing. Pure trauma. Celine is in tears, refusing his lethal methods, begging for another way out. Kale just nods and locks down the safe house like a military fortress. Goons are patrolling every street. Celine cannot even go to therapy without a massive escort. Little Noah is feeling all this heavy drama, stopping his meals and clinging to his mom. Her therapist drops a hard reality check. Kids are emotional sponges. The life lesson here is simple but tough. You absolutely cannot hide your internal chaos from the people who love you most. They feel your storm, even when you try to force a smile. The therapist tells her Noah feels her panic, and Celine breaks down, saying she does not know how to stop being afraid. But how can she? Every single shadow looks like her crazy ex Damien. Every knock on the door sends her pulse through the roof. Then, on Thursday at 9:34 at night, her phone rings. It is her mom, Linda, and her voice is shaking. Damien showed up at her house. Celine's blood runs absolute ice. Her mom says he stood on the porch for 20 minutes, screaming about his rights as a father, and claiming he knows Celine is hiding in Hartford. He warned it is only a matter of time before he hunts her down. When Celine asks about the police, her mom drops the most frustrating reality. The cops will not do a thing until he actually hurts someone. The life lesson. The system will not always protect you before the damage is done. Sometimes, you have to be your own shield when the rules fail you. You and I are going to unpack this next part together. Because it is wild. The restraining order only protects Celine and her son, leaving her mom totally exposed. Celine wants to scream, punch a wall, or just vanish off the face of the earth instead. She tells her mom to go hide at Aunt Marie's place. When she hangs up, she just sits there in the pitch-black living room, listening to her little boy breathe, feeling the walls completely crushing her. Then Friday morning hits, and absolute chaos drops. Kale is in a massive business meeting when his guy Dante calls with an emergency. Damien just waltzed right into the Hartford Police Department and filed literal kidnapping charges against Celine. He is claiming she kept Noah away from visitation and is in contempt of court. The cops are investigating. The life lesson here is brutal. Toxic people will use the very laws meant for justice as a weapon to maintain their control. Celine has not actually broken a single rule, but that does not matter. Damien is playing the ultimate victim card. He hired a shady lawyer to spin this whole thing as parental alienation. Dante tells Kale that while the charges will not stick forever, they will make Celine's life a living nightmare right now. The cops want to interview her and check the safe house. Kale is furious, yelling absolutely not. But if she refuses, she looks guilty. She is hiding from a monster who abused her for 4 years. But try explaining that to cops who think domestic issues are just overblown drama. Kale takes a deep breath and agrees to set up the interview, demanding his top lawyer Patricia be there on the record. But wait, it gets even worse. Damien's lawyer just subpoenaed Celine's employment records. The life lesson. A slick lie can travel halfway around the world, while the truth is still tying its shoes. Dante drops the real bomb. They are building a case that Kale is financially coercing Celine. They are claiming he used his power to manipulate a vulnerable employee, controlling her just like Damien did, but with money instead of fists. Kale goes completely still. The accusation hits him hard, because deep down he knows it is not entirely wrong. He used his mafia resources to trap her in a safety net, lawyers, doctors. Safe houses all provided with the unspoken rule that she belongs under his protection now. Control is still control, even when it is wrapped up in good intentions. Kale hangs up the phone feeling totally lost, for the first time in years. This criminal mastermind has absolutely no idea what his next move should be. Later that day, he walks into the safe house to find Celine doing laundry. The life lesson here is deep. You can trap someone in a golden cage, but it is still a cage. Stick with me, because this is where the confrontation gets so real. Celine drops her laundry basket in pure shock when Kale tells her about the kidnapping charges. She screams that she showed up to every visitation, while Damien was the one who flaked. But Damien is rewriting the story to look like the victim. Kale tells her the cops want an interview, and if she skips it, they will put out a warrant. Celine breaks down, feeling like this nightmare is never going to end. But then Kale drops the financial coercion allegations. With every word, Celine's face changes from scared to stone cold. She looks right at him and asks if it is true. Are you controlling me? That question hits Kale like a knife in the ribs. He tries to deny it, but she fires back, pointing out that he manages her entire life. From where she sleeps to who guards her door. The life lesson. True help means giving someone their power back, not taking it over for them. Celine is pulling no punches now. She tells Kale that he offered to make Damien disappear without even asking what she wanted. Kale tries to defend himself, saying he just wanted to help, but Celine is shaking with anger. She reminds him she just spent 4 miserable years with a man who controlled her clothes, her friends, and her thoughts now. She is letting another man do the exact same thing under the disguise of good intentions. She calls him out for watching her from day one and building an escape plan without ever asking for her input. Kale coldly replies that he never laid a hand on her, but Celine hits him with the hardest truth. He made himself so indispensable that she is entirely dependent on him again. She is terrified she just traded one abusive cage for a prettier one. The words hang in the air, brutal and raw. Kale feels his heart absolutely shatter, because he knows she is right, the life lesson. Good intentions do not cancel out bad methods. Kale realizes he acted exactly like his toxic father, thinking his protection justified his total control over her life. Quietly, he asks what she wants him to do. Wiping her tears, Celine says she just needs space to figure out who she really is without a man calling the shots. Kale gives a sharp, final nod and heads for the door. Right before he walks out, she whispers a soft thank you for everything. Even the complicated stuff. He does not even answer. Outside, he orders his guard Marco to give her space, but commands him not to let her out of his sight. He drives off feeling like he just lost something he never truly owned. Cut to Saturday morning. And we are in a bleak, sterile police conference room, smelling like cheap coffee and bleach. Celine sits across from a tired-looking detective named Lisa Morrison. The life lesson to take away from this emotional wreckage. If you really love someone, you have to be willing to step back and let them breathe. We are going to uncover what really went down in this interrogation room. Celine has her shark of a lawyer, Patricia, sitting right beside her with a recorder running. The detective starts pushing, asking about Damien's complaint that Celine blocked his visits. Celine confidently fires back that it is a total lie. She went to the center 3 times, and Damien ghosted every single one. Boom. Patricia slides a folder of time-stamped sign-in sheets across the table, proving Celine arrived at 2 in the afternoon every time while her ex was a no-show. The detective tries to pivot, demanding to know where little Noah is hiding. Patricia instantly shuts it down, stating his location is legally protected. She reminds the cop that Celine holds a strict restraining order against a man with a heavy history of violence. The life lesson here is golden. When the world tries to corner you, always bring receipts and never back down from a fight you know you can win. Let's jump right into this mess. Celine's lawyer tells the detective that revealing little Noah's location is a literal death sentence. They agree on a supervised meeting, but then the cops drop a massive bombshell. Damon, her toxic ex, is claiming Celine is secretly dating her boss, Kyle Varelli. He tells the police Kyle is financially trapping her. Celine clutches the table, denying it all. Kyle set up her safe house and saved her, but never asked for a single favor. Her lawyer shuts down the interview instantly, blasting the detective for implying a woman cannot accept help without owing her body. Let me tell you, true support never comes with a hidden price tag. The detective backs off and Celine steps outside, leaning against the cold wall, gasping for air. Patricia is furious, realizing Damon's legal team set them up to plant seeds of doubt. They don't need proof. They just want to make Celine look like a manipulator who uses powerful men, totally destroying her credibility. Celine feels sick to her stomach. The only way out is to publicly cut all ties with Kyle. No money, no contact, zero dependence. Sometimes you literally have to burn your safety net to prove you can stand on your own 2 feet. That night, Celine makes the toughest phone call of her life. She tells Kyle she is leaving the safe house immediately, so Damon cannot use it against her. You can feel the heartbreaking silence on his end. He hates it, but she insists she must prove her independence. After a long pause, the boss finally caves and agrees to send his men to help her pack. Celine hangs up and moves into a freezing studio apartment in a sketchy area. The windows do not even lock right, but it is hers, no mafia bodyguards. Just her and Noah. You and I both know this is the calm before the storm that night. Sirens wail outside and she questions her choice, suddenly. Her phone buzzes unknown number. She answers and her blood runs cold. It is Damon. His chilling whisper reveals he knows exactly where she is. He laughs a sick, vicious laugh, mocking her for thinking leaving her rich boss would save her. This absolute creep has been watching her building for 3 days. He saw her struggle with the boxes. He even saw her tuck Noah into bed through that broken window lock. It is a terrifying reminder that true monsters never just let you walk away. Celine cannot even breathe. Damon taunts her, bragging she is alone with no one to hear her scream, then hangs up. She sits frozen until she hears it. Slow, heavy footsteps in the hallway, stopping outside her door. 3 slow knocks, pure nightmare fuel. Celine snatches Noah, clamps her hand over his mouth, and bolts into the bathroom. Damon calls her name, rattling the doorknob. Her heart is hammering so fast it might explode. The main lock clicks. He is inside, with shaking hands. She locks the flimsy bathroom door and frantically dials 911. She whispers to the dispatcher that a man broke in and is going to kill her, giving her address in a terrified voice. In moments of absolute terror, raw survival instinct always takes over to protect the people we love. The dispatcher says police are coming. Celine hears Damon trashing the place, calling her name in a creepy sing-song voice. Noah whimpers. Celine holds him tight, tears falling. His footsteps stop at the bathroom. The knob turns locked, suddenly. Damon punches the door so hard the frame cracks. He screams at her to open up, slamming it until the cheap wood splinters, just as Celine screams. Police sirens cut through the night. Damon hears them approaching. He hisses through the broken door that this is not over, then bolts. The front door slams, leaving a dead silence. Celine collapses to the floor, shaking uncontrollably while clutching her son. The cops arrive 4 minutes later, but the monster is gone. The deepest emotional scars are always left by the terrifying silence right after the storm. Celine realizes she cannot fight this alone. It takes real courage to admit when you are out of your depth. She calls Kyle and simply says, "I need help, guys." He arrives in exactly 11 minutes. She hears his tires screeching outside, then his footsteps rushing up the stairs. He bursts inside, ignoring the cops and the shattered door. His eyes lock onto hers with intense worry, asking if she is hurt. Celine shakes her head, holding Noah tight. Kyle turns his lethal glare to the police, demanding answers. An officer gives a robotic rundown about a forced entry and the suspect fleeing. Kyle demands to know if they put out an alert for Damon. The cop makes pathetic excuses about lacking physical witnesses. Kyle is absolutely furious. This monster just broke in and terrorized a mother and her child. What more proof do they actually need? Kyle's voice drops to a dangerously cold tone. The cop tries to play it down, but Kyle steps right up to him, radiating pure authority. He blasts them for treating an attempted assault like a basic domestic dispute. A younger officer nervously suggests Celine visit the station tomorrow. Kyle shuts that down instantly. He dictates the terms like a true boss. She gives her statement here with her lawyer, and the police must park a patrol car outside until Damon is locked up. The older cop tries to argue that is not standard procedure, but Kyle stares into his soul and growls, "Make it work. You must always stand your ground when protecting innocent people." The intimidated cop finally backs down and leaves the apartment. Once the room is totally clear, Kyle gently crouches down right in front of an exhausted Celine. Celine sits frozen, flooded with adrenaline. Kyle tells her to pack a bag. She panics, worrying Damon's lawyers will use a safe house against her. Kyle drops a massive twist. She is moving into his personal penthouse. She argues that ruins her legal case, but Kyle does not care. When she cries she is not safe anywhere, he delivers an epic line. "Then at least be unsafe somewhere I can protect you sometimes." Accepting a shield is the only way to survive a brutal battle. Looking at her sleeping son, she finally agrees. They arrive at Kyle's massive 42nd floor penthouse. It is covered in marble, overlooking the city like a literal king's throne. The most striking thing is the controlled silence. It is the deep, heavy quiet that only insane wealth and untouchable power can actually buy. Marco hauls the bags inside while Kyle disables an alarm system fit for a military base. Turning to Celine, the boss softens up, pointing out the guest room. Feeling out of place in this luxury, Celine says she doesn't know how to thank him. Kyle loosens his tie, looking exhausted. "Don't thank me yet. We need to talk about what happens next. You and I both know the real vendetta is just beginning." She asks if it can wait, and he promises she is finally safe. She wants to believe that, but safety feels like a total illusion. She tucks Noah into a bed that costs more than her car, staring out the massive window at the city lights. She refuses to let her tears fall. Down below, normal people are living peaceful lives, completely untouched by toxic, obsessive monsters like Damon Cross, while Damien prowls the streets. Celine is running out of options. She wakes up, and for one split second, everything feels fine. Then the brutal reality of her stalker hits her like a truck. She walks into the kitchen to find Kyle looking like a millionaire hitman, rocking a suit that costs more than her rent. He has a massive gourmet breakfast waiting. She tries to thank him, but he bluntly admits his enforcer Marco bought it. They swap a tired look, both confessing they did not sleep a single wink. The tension is incredibly thick as they sip their bitter coffee. Then Kyle puts his mug down and bluntly declares that they must end this nightmare permanently. Here is a solid life lesson. No matter how much money or fancy food you have, true peace of mind is the only luxury in this world that actually matters. We are talking about a permanent solution. Kyle lays out the facts. Damien broke the restraining order, which is enough for a warrant. Dante tracked the psycho to a motel. Celine wants to call the cops, but Kyle instantly shuts it down. He knows the police are buried in slow bureaucracy. By the time they act, Damien will vanish. Kyle pitches his own wild plan. He will send his crew to snatch Damien, hold him captive, and hand him to the cops with hard evidence. Celine freaks out, calling it literal kidnapping. Kyle smoothly rebrands it as a citizen's arrest. Then he makes it crystal clear. He is not asking for permission. He is telling her exactly what will happen. The lesson is crucial. The official rules will not always protect you, sometimes. Taking control of your safety means bending the law just enough to ensure you actually survive. Look at this, guys. This is the real Kyle Varley, the mob boss who runs a whole empire with cold violence and makes massive problems vanish. Now he wants to weaponize that darkness just for her. She asks what happens if things go sideways, and he does not even blink. He promises to handle it, dropping a heavy reality check. He is not here to be her hero. He wants to give her the power to stop being afraid. That hits her hard since fear was her baseline for 4 years. But here is a quick lesson we can all learn. Just surviving is never actually living. You have to fight back. Celine finally snaps out of it and tells him to do it. Kyle locks in. He orders her to stay hidden inside with Marco at the door, and warns her to call him the second anything sketchy happens. "What are you going to do?" That is the exact question he asked, and Kale's answer was ice cold. He grabs his jacket and says he is going to end this. Look, the Starlight Inn is literally the kind of place where dreams just completely flatline. Kale parked 2 blocks down, watching the spot through tinted windows while Dante checked the surveillance feeds. Room 23. 0 movement for 40 minutes. Kale scans the whole layout. 2 floors, useless security cameras, and 4 heavy hitters on his side. The police are 30 minutes out with a warrant. But Kale does not care. If Damien resists, Kale is ready to put him in the ground. Here is a quick life lesson for you guys. When a quiet man finally gets angry, you should probably start running. Vincent and Tommy take the back, and the trap is officially set. So Kale and Dante roll up to the motel room, and it is dead silent. Monday morning, empty room, sketchy vibes. Kale knocks, but nobody is home. Dante uses a master key from a bribed clerk, and the door swings open to pure chaos, empty bottles everywhere. Bed totally wrecked, but the walls. Bro, the walls are covered in photos of Celine, Noah, the safe house, the works. Damien was building a literal stalker shrine like a complete psycho. But the guy was gone. Dante whispers that he knew they were coming. The window is wide open with fresh scuff marks. Right then, Marco calls Kale, and Kale's blood just freezes solid. Marco says Celine is missing, and here is a lesson you and I can both learn right now. Never assume you have the upper hand until the game is actually over, because the board can flip in a single second. Kale is absolutely losing his mind. Marco says he turned his back for 5 minutes to check the perimeter, and poof, Celine and the kid vanished. Kale orders him to find her, telling Dante that if Damien has her, it is game over for him. But here is the crazy part, guys. Celine actually made this choice on her own. She stood in that billionaire penthouse and realized that hiding behind other people was getting her nowhere. Damien spent 4 years making her feel totally helpless, and she was done playing the victim. She got a text from an unknown number telling her to meet at Bushnell Park or spend her life looking over her shoulder. Every single red flag was waving, but she went anyway. Listen, sometimes you have to face the monster in the closet to realize it is just shadows. She was absolutely terrified, but she was finally done listening to fear. So she grabs her son Noah, wraps him up, and sneaks right out of the penthouse while Marco is distracted. The elevator ride down had to feel like an eternity, her heart beating out of her chest. She hops into a cab she cannot even afford and tells the driver to hit Bushnell Park. The driver can clearly see she is terrified, but she just tells him to drive. 20 minutes later, she is standing at the park entrance, clutching Noah's hand, scanning the dog walkers and joggers for her psycho ex, and boom, there he is, sitting under a dead oak tree. He looks horrible, super thin, unshaven, just radiating miserable energy. He is even wearing a jacket she bought him 2 years ago, back when things were somewhat normal. When he sees her, he stands up and says, "You came honestly." Holding on to the past is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. Celine is trying to keep it together and asks him what he wants. Damien hits her with the classic manipulator line, saying he just wants to talk and get his family back. He swears up and down that he made mistakes, but he can change, bro. How many times have we heard this exact speech? After every broken rib, every night locked in the bathroom, he would say the exact same thing. But Celine is finally awake. She knows believing his lies is just easier than packing her bags. So she looks him dead in the eyes and says the magic word. No, it was like she stepped right off a cliff, but in the best way possible. Damien's face instantly twists from sad puppy to pure rage. He tells her she does not mean it, and she stands her ground. Life lesson right here. Setting boundaries will anger the people who used to benefit from you having none. She calls him out right then and there. She reminds him how he shoved their son into a table so hard it split the kid's head open, and how he threatened her when she tried to intervene. Damien pulls the classic excuse, blaming the alcohol. But Celine is completely unbothered by his pity party. She pulls Noah close and says they deserve a life without constant fear, for a split second. She thinks he might actually walk away. Instead, his hand shoots out and grabs her wrist so hard it bruises. He hisses that she is his property and he will never let her go. Pain is shooting up her arm. Noah is screaming. But something inside Celine totally shifts. She did not break, guys. She ignited. She spent 4 years shrinking herself to survive this guy's temper. But you cannot keep a fire trapped in a glass jar forever without it blowing up in your face. Celine was officially done being small. She drives her knee straight into Damien's crotch with zero hesitation. Kyle loses his mind, asking why she tried reasoning with a maniac. His voice is ice. He reminds her she just gave this psycho direct access. She and little Noah could have died. Celine looks right at him, crying, saying she had to prove she was not afraid anymore. Kyle goes silent, asking if it worked. She admits she is terrified, but she is done running. Listen. The bravest thing you can do in life is admit your fear while refusing to back down. That is a solid fact. The crew rushes them back to the penthouse with armed escorts. Marco sweeps every floor. Kyle goes into massive paranoia mode, checking locks and placing guards at every door. Once Noah is safe watching cartoons, Kyle pours 2 glasses of whiskey. Neither of them takes a sip. Listen up, guys, because the plot gets absolutely crazy here. Kale looks Celine dead in the eye with a massive reality check. He tells her Damien is completely unhinged. Restraining orders. Bro literally does not care. Kale lays out 2 brutal choices. Either wait for Damien to put her or Noah in the hospital before cops actually care, or Kale makes the dude permanently disappear tonight. No body, no evidence, just poof. Celine flashes back to 4 years of toxic trauma, knowing the justice system is broken. She asks Kale what happens to him if she agrees. Bro doesn't even blink. He just coldly says his people are pros at making problems vanish. Sometimes in life, you have to draw your own line in the sand when nobody else will protect you. Kale casually explains Damien will just become a forgotten cold case. Real mob boss energy right there. Celine is battling her conscience. But then she remembers her son crying in terror. Boom, she realizes morality is a luxury she cannot afford anymore. She tells Kale to do it. But right as he starts dialing, she hits him with a wild plot twist. She stops him, saying she has to be the one to set the trap. If she is calling the shots, she is going to own the whole thing. Kale is honestly impressed by her guts. He tosses her a burner phone, and her hands are shaking as she dials the monster she used to love. The lesson here is simple. Facing your demons head-on is the only way to truly take your power back. The dude answers instantly. Celine takes a breath and demands a face-to-face meeting. No cops, no lawyers. She tells him to meet at their old warehouse at 9 tonight. Damien actually asks if it is a trap. Celine hits him with a massive lie, saying she wants to fix things, and guess what? The fool buys it, because abusers always think their victims will crawl back. She hangs up, and Kale immediately makes some cryptic coded calls to his hitters. He tells Celine his crew is ready for 8, and she needs to stay behind. She wants to watch it go down, but Kale shuts that down fast. He tells her she absolutely does not need to witness a monster's end, honestly. Sometimes stepping away and letting karma handle the trash is the most empowering move you can make. Look at this, guys. Celine is sitting in Kale's penthouse, literally holding her sleeping kid, waiting for the mafia hit she just ordered on her ex, Damien. She knows Kale is right. Once you cross into this underworld life, you don't just walk out clean. But here is the thing you and I gotta remember. The universe has a wicked sense of humor. 10 minutes go by, her phone rings. It is Kale, and his voice is ice cold. Damien didn't walk into the trap alone. He brought a gun and he brought a hostage. The Dawn is furious, and Celine's blood absolutely freezes when he drops the bomb. The hostage is her own mother. You can hear the absolute chaos through the phone speaker. Kale barking orders, car doors slamming, and the unmistakable sound of Celine's mother screaming in the background. The trap she set just completely backfired. Now her mom is in the crosshairs of a desperate man with a weapon, and it is 100% Celine's fault. Next thing we know, she is flying out the door. The warehouse looks like a rusted nightmare straight out of a horror movie. 3 black SUVs are surrounding the place, and Kale's mob enforcers are setting up a perimeter like a military strike force. Before Celine can even jump out, Marco grabs her arm, telling her to stay put. But she is not having it. That is her mother in there. Marco tries to play the loyal soldier, telling her it is boss's orders to stay in the car. Celine just snaps back that she does not work for his boss, rips her arm away, and bolts. She dodges 2 of Kale's massive bodyguards like an absolute pro and kicks open the rusted metal doors. Inside, it is dark, smelling like engine oil and total despair. The works cast these crazy harsh shadows. Kale is standing there with his hands up, trying to talk Damien down. But guys, the visual here is insane. Damien is in the middle of the room, holding a pistol right to Linda's temple. Celine's mom is completely frozen. You know that terrifying stillness a deer gets right before the worst happens. That is her. Damien is completely losing his mind. His voice is totally shredded, yelling that since they took his family, he is taking hers. Kale tries to play it cool, saying Linda has no part in this mob drama, but Damien is not backing down. He knows exactly who the Varelli family is and what they do to people suddenly. The whole place goes dead silent as Celine steps right into the light. Damien's face goes through about 10 different emotions in 1 second: shock, absolute rage, and this super toxic obsession. He demands that everyone else leave so they can talk alone, just the 2 of them. Kale steps right in front of Celine to block him. Not happening. Damien's response, he promises to pull the trigger. This guy actually presses the barrel harder against Linda's head, blaming Celine for all of it. Kale's hitmen are literally circling them like sharks, looking for a clean sniper angle. But Damien is smart, using the mom as a human shield against every mobster in the room. Celine has to make a play. She tells him she will talk, but only if he lets her mom walk away. He thinks she is lying, but here is a simple truth you and I need to learn. Toxic people always think they are the ones who are truly loved. She challenges him, saying if he ever cared about her, he will let the mom go. She promises she will not run. She stepped into the lion's den on purpose to face him, and just like that you see it in his eyes, a sick, twisted spark of hope. It is that desperate, pathetic hope abusers always have, thinking their victims will just run back to them. Slowly, Damien lets the mother go. She stumbles toward the exit, looking back at Celine with sheer terror before disappearing. Now it is just Celine, standing 20 feet from the guy who made her life a living hell for 4 years, surrounded by mobsters who cannot shoot without risking her life. Damien lowers the pistol and begs her to say she still loves him. Celine finally sees him for what he really is, not some powerful monster. Just a broken, dangerous guy who only speaks the language of violence. She looks him dead in the eye and tells him the cold truth. She does not love him. She has not loved him for a very long time. She completely shatters him. She admits she loved the old version of him, the guy who promised her a good life. The guy she pretended was still there long after the nightmare started, but then she drops the absolute hammer. She lists every awful thing he did, choking her out in front of their own kid, isolating her, making her think she was the crazy one. Damien is literally crying now, spitting out apologies. But here is the thing about apologies from people like him. They are totally worthless. Sorry does not fix broken ribs. Sorry does not fix shoving their little boy into a table. He begs her, swearing he can change. Celine just shakes her head. There is no going back from this level of betrayal. Not a chance. She tells him straight up that changing means admitting he is the one creating the chaos, and that his violence is not love. He will never do that. Because the truth is he destroyed the only person who actually cared about him. Damien totally crumbles. He raises the weapon. But not at Celine, he points it right at himself, crying about what the point is if she is gone. Kale steps up, trying to stop him, calling him a massive coward for trying to check out early instead of facing the mafia music. But Celine steps closer. She tells him to look at her. And guys, this is the wildest plot twist. She looks into his eyes and finally sees what is really driving this guy. It is not power, it is pure, unfiltered fear. He is terrified of being a nobody without her. The control was just a mask for his own massive insecurities. She lays it all out for him. She is leaving forever. He is going to prison. He is losing his kid, and he is going to rot in a cell. But she refuses to let him take the easy way out. You and I know that real justice means sitting with your mistakes every single day. She tells him he has to survive and face the consequences of what he did. Maybe then he will figure out that real love does not leave bruises. Damien just stares at her, totally defeated. His knees give out, and he collapses on the warehouse floor, sobbing like a baby. Kale's enforcers rush in, grab the weapon, and slap the handcuffs on him. Game over. The scene jumps to absolute chaos. Damien is sitting in a police cruiser, totally broken, sobbing Celine's name like a massive loser. Kale slides up to make sure she is safe. Honestly, she is better than safe. She is finally free. The cops process the scene while her friend Linda gives her a huge emotional hug, telling her to never apologize for what that psycho did. Then Kale drops the ultimate update. The cops are slapping Damien with kidnapping, assault, and violating his order. Bro is looking at 15 to 20 years behind bars. Even better, the judge is permanently stripping away his parental rights. Full custody belongs to Celine. The big takeaway here. Standing your ground against a toxic bully is terrifying. But it is the only way to break the cycle and win. Celine hears the amazing news but just feels empty. She looks at Kale, asking about his initial plan to wipe Damien off the map. Kale stays mysterious, pointing out that Damien is facing clean legal justice now. He knows Celine needs that, even if he prefers the mafia way. Suddenly, Marco walks up carrying Noah, who magically slept through this entire insane showdown. Celine grabs her boy, holding him tight. This right here is what the whole war was for, not crazy revenge, just keeping her kid safe from a monster. Fast forward 4 months to the courtroom drama. Celine sits front row while the prosecutor exposes Damien for the violent villain he really is. The real lesson. True peace comes from protecting what you love, not just destroying what you hate. The prosecutor drops a mountain of evidence. Medical records, reports and voicemails where Damien flips from sweet to threatening in seconds. His lawyer tries playing the trauma card, but the jury is not buying it. Boom. Guilty on all counts. slapped with 18 years behind bars. As the sentence drops, Damien turns and glares at Celine. She does not flinch at all. She stares right back with pure boss energy, until they drag him away in handcuffs outside. Her lawyer reminds her that while the legal war is over, emotional healing takes real time. A week later, Celine is back at her job, finally living in a safe apartment where she can actually breathe. The ultimate life lesson. Surviving the storm is huge, but rebuilding your peace is where the real victory begins. Let's unpack this, guys, because the tension is unhinged. Margaret escorts Celine to the top floor. Her stomach is doing literal backflips since the trial. Cale basically ghosted her, only sending an expensive bouquet with a cold congratulations note, absolute radio silence. She walks in and there he is, perfect suit, icy aura of total control. But his eyes are different today. He tells her to shut the door. And the silence is deafening. Finally, the big boss drops his pen and does the unthinkable. He actually apologizes for overstepping, for pulling her strings, and for treating her like a helpless victim instead of a survivor. The lesson here: sometimes the biggest flex a powerful man can make is simply admitting he was completely out of line. Celine isn't having the pity party. She crosses her arms, saying he just gave her the tools to save herself. Cale looks out the window and drops a truth bomb. He spent years trying not to be a toxic monster like Damien, but control is control, and she deserved better. But Celine steps up. She tells him straight up that he is nothing like her ex. When she wanted space, Cale backed off. Damien would have literally burned the city to the ground before letting her walk, while Cale actually stepped back. He says that doesn't fix his past mistakes, but Celine hits him with a reality check. It means he can grow. They agree to see where this goes. 0 bodyguards, 0 hostage situations, because honestly, real relationships are built on pure freedom, not golden handcuffs. Before leaving, Celine thanks him for seeing her potential when she was completely lost. Cale's icy exterior finally melts. Fast forward. And life is giving our girl a massive break. She grinds out her degree at night, while climbing the corporate ladder by day. Without constantly looking over her shoulder for hitmen, she thrives, snagging a huge promotion. And little Noah, he struts into kindergarten, lets go of her hand and runs off to play. No trauma, no panic, just a regular kid living his best life, watching him. Celine feels something totally new. Not just the relief of surviving a nightmare, but the raw pride of actually living. She signs up for therapy strictly on her own terms. It goes to show you cannot build a brand new future until you clear out the rubble of your past. Stick with me here, because the mental game gets real. Her doctor helps her unpack years of psychological warfare, teaching her to separate actual danger from leftover paranoia. The doc hits her with a hard truth. The triggers are not going away. Guys acting like Damien will always set off alarm bells. But over time, the volume gets turned down. She learns that healing is a totally messy ride. Some days you own the world. Other days you can barely get out of bed. Being scared does not make you weak. It makes you human. Then boom. Plot twist. Months later, a shady envelope shows up from a Connecticut prison. It is Damien's handwriting. Absolute chills. She stares at this ticking time bomb for 20 solid minutes. She almost tosses it in the trash. But curiosity is a vicious trap. She simply has to know what this man has to say for himself. She rips it open, and at first it is exactly what you expect from a toxic ex. Pages of worthless apologies, blaming his past for his evil actions. But then, the vibe completely shifts. The final paragraph hits differently. He is in a brutal anger management program, forced to look at his actual actions, stripping away all excuses. The former underworld boss finally admits he is broken and that he broke her too. He tells her he does not expect forgiveness, and demands she give Noah the childhood he tried to steal. He drops a heavy line, saying love is not enough when you literally do not know how to be a better person. It is wild to see the villain finally look in the mirror. Celine sits in dead silence, reading the confession 3 times. Growth is real, but it never fully erases the deep scars you leave behind on others. She folds the letter and drops it in a box with the old police reports, shoving it into her closet, not to dwell on the past, but as a hardcore reminder of the hell she survived. Fast forward a full year since that insane warehouse showdown. Cale asks her out, but he doesn't flex his wealth. He takes her to a tiny hidden Italian joint. They sit there, sharing garlic bread and talking about absolutely normal stuff. No mafia drama, no rescue ops, just 2 humans finally breathing, out of nowhere. Cale pauses and asks the ultimate question. Does she ever regret leaving Damien? Celine takes a long beat. She admits that sometimes. She misses the fake version of him she fell for, the ghost that existed before the violence took over. You can mourn a fantasy, even after you finally escape the real-life nightmare. Alright guys, stick with me because this ending is absolute peak fiction. Celine is looking dead into Kyle's eyes, and she does not regret a single thing about walking away from that mob life. If she had stayed with Damien, she would still be that terrified girl hiding bruises, teaching her kid that love equals pain, but nah, she flipped the script. She fought back, survived the underworld, and claimed her own life. Kyle hits her with this genuine smile, calling her extraordinary. They finish their dinner. The vibes are immaculate, and the Hartford sky is practically glowing. He walks her to her car, and instead of backing off, he leans in. She doesn't dodge it. This isn't some desperate movie kiss, guys. This is two absolute survivors who crawled through hell and finally found each other on the flip side. When they finally pull apart, Celine is grinning like she just won the lottery. She hits the road, windows entirely rolled down, blasting songs she actually vibes with, instead of whatever classical garbage kept her mob boss ex calm. She gets back to her spot, pays the sitter, and carries little Noah to bed. The kid wakes up just to tell her he was dreaming about dinosaurs and ice cream. Pure wholesome content, right? He tells her he loves her, and as he falls back asleep it hits her. For 4 long years, she was barely keeping her head above water, just surviving the mafia madness now. She is genuinely living. Sure, she still checks the locks 3 times because trauma is real, but she is free. Meanwhile, her ex Damien is rotting in a concrete cell for the next 18 years. Absolute boss move. Let us fast forward a bit, because this glow-up is honestly unreal. 2 whole years drop off the calendar, and we are back in the exact same Varley Holdings conference room, where this entire insane mafia drama kicked off. But get a load of this plot twist. Celine is not sitting in the corner trembling anymore. She is right at the head of the absolute table. The old boss stepped down, and Kyle promoted our girl to director of operations. We are talking major authority, a massive salary, and zero disrespect tolerated. Remember the terrified woman hiding her mob bruises under baggy clothes? Deleted. Now she is rocking custom-tailored suits, running the entire boardroom, and taking up all the space she wants without a single apology. Her squad respects her because she earned every bit of it. Right after she absolutely crushes the meeting, Kyle strolls into her office. He asks how it went, and she just smirks, knowing she nailed it. But then Kyle hits her with the ultimate boss move. He slides an envelope across her desk, and inside is a fat 6-figure check. He tells her it is back pay for every single hour she worked while living in pure terror under Damien's thumb. For every promotion the mafia stole from her. He looks her dead in the eye and says she earned it by surviving things that would break anyone else, and doing it with pure class. She is practically in tears, guys, completely speechless. But Kyle just tells her to use the cash to build the empire she deserves. Later, she picks up Noah from school, and the kid is exploding with normal 7-year-old science project hype. So Noah is bouncing off the walls with this loud, joyful kid energy, begging for pizza and asking if Mr. Kyle can come along. Celine is totally down. They roll up to this gritty little hole in the wall spot that slings slices bigger than the kid's head. 20 minutes later, Kyle walks in. He is still rocking his high-end suit, but he loosened the tie, looking like a mob enforcer off the clock. Noah immediately starts pitching him this wild science project about baking soda volcanoes and dinosaurs. It makes 0 sense. But Kyle is listening with the exact same intense focus he uses for billion-dollar buyouts. Celine watches them, and you can practically see her heart melt. This is her real family now. Messy, unconventional, but real. After they drop Noah off, they take a stroll through the park. Now the park looks totally different tonight. No mafia hitmen, no drama, just regular people walking dogs under the streetlights. Kyle asks the big question. Does she ever think about her mob boss ex? Celine keeps it so real. She says she used to be angry, then terrified, but now he is just a ghost. He does not control her future. Then she flips it and asks Kyle about his own toxic father. Kyle drops some heavy truth, guys. He says he realized some people are just too shattered to fix, and trying to save them will only destroy you. His mom died trying to fix his dad, but then he looks at Celine and says he spent 20 years trying to save her, but she saved herself. He gave her the tools, but she swung the hammer. They stand there under the golden lights, completely getting each other. And for the first time in forever, our girl actually feels completely bulletproof. Not because some big bad enforcer is guarding her door, but because she turned herself into a weapon. Boom. Fast forward another 5 years. Celine is chilling in her own luxury apartment, not rented. Fully owned, cash down. Noah is 10 years old now, getting ready for summer camp. He is confident, zero trauma. Totally blanked out on those dark days hiding in the bathroom from Damien's rage. The therapist says it is a blessing, and honestly, Celine agrees. She just wants him to have a normal childhood. The kid is checking off his packing list like a pro, grinning at his mom, after he ships out. She is sitting on the couch with her coffee, just taking a minute to process the last 5 years of leveling up. So she and Kyle have been officially running things together for 3 solid years. No marriage certificate. Because they do not need a piece of paper to prove they are endgame. They just built a life that actually works. Kyle learned how to be a partner instead of a bodyguard, and she learned how to accept help without feeling weak. Look at this dynamic, guys. They actually talk out their problems instead of throwing punches. Her phone lights up with a text from him, demanding she cook dinner at her place. She fires back a snappy reply. Totally in her element, she looks out the window at the Hartford skyline, the city that watched her hit rock bottom and rise up. Meanwhile, 3 hours away in maximum security, Damien is rotting in year 13 of his sentence. He is totally erased. He is just a faded memory now, and memories cannot throw punches. Celine catches her reflection in the mirror, and the woman staring back is unrecognizable. She is 33 now, successful, hardened, covered in invisible scars, but absolutely unbreakable. She beat a system built to crush her. And here is the real kicker, guys. She did not win because some knight in shining armor swooped in. She won because she finally realized the only person who could save Celine was Celine. All the lawyers and safe houses were just backup. She threw the knockout punch. Cut to that night at Kyle's penthouse. They are out on the balcony, looking like royalty over the city. Kyle asks if she is nervous about Noah being away. She admits she is, but it is the good kind of fear, the kind that proves she won. Listen up, because this is where the pieces finally click together. Celine looks at Kyle, the guy who dragged her out of the fire, and drops a massive truth bomb. Kyle spent his whole life thinking his mom Elena was a total tragic failure. She wasted 15 years trying to fix a completely broken, toxic boss. But plot twist. Celine looks him dead in the eyes and says she did not fail. She survived just long enough to teach Kyle what actual loyalty and strength look like. And because of that brutal 15-year nightmare, Kyle knew exactly how to pull Celine out of her own hell. So Elena basically reached from beyond the grave to save both of them. Kyle is holding back tears. Knowing his mom would have absolutely loved Celine, they are holding hands. 2 survivors who walk through absolute fire. And honestly, the lesson here is simple. The hardest battles the people before us fought might just be the exact training we need to survive our own. It is just wild to think about the woman Celine used to be. The old Celine actually believed love was supposed to be a punishment, that she was trapped in this twisted nightmare with zero way out. But that version of her, completely gone, replaced by an absolute boss who finally realizes her own worth. She learns that true strength is not about having zero fear. It is about being terrified out of your mind and pulling the trigger on your escape plan anyway. Looking down at the Hartford skyline, she knows the city is packed with people fighting their own secret wars. But Celine, she finally claimed her ultimate prize. Her freedom is not locked in some billionaire penthouse or a shady warehouse. It is in her kids smiling, Kyle having her back, and staring into the mirror at a woman who beat the worst odds. Look, nobody is going to hand you your freedom. You have to claw your way out of the mud and take it for yourself. So the vicious cycle is completely shattered. And notice how it happened. Not because some action hero dropped in to magically fix her life. It ended because Celine made the terrifying choice to rip herself out of the dark and step into the light. That one dangerous decision changed the entire game. You and I both know how easy it is to stay in a bad situation, because it is what we are used to. But this story proves that the ultimate vendetta against the people who tried to break you is simply living a good life. Celine flipped the script on the whole system, proving that your trauma does not get the final word. She is writing her own ending now, and it is glorious. It takes unbelievable guts to cut your losses and walk away from everything you knew. But when you finally make that call, everything changes. You hold the pen to your own story, so make sure you are the one writing the final chapter.
Celine's story teaches one of the most important lessons about abusive relationships. Leaving is not easy, and it is never a simple decision. From the outside, people often ask, why didn't she leave sooner? But this story shows the painful truth. Abuse does not begin with violence. It begins with control, fear, apologies, manipulation, and small moments that make the victim doubt herself. For years, Celine lives with Damien's anger, excuses, and emotional control. She learns to move carefully, speak softly, and survive each day without making him explode. This is not weakness. It is a survival strategy. When a person lives in fear for a long time, their mind becomes trained to avoid danger, even if that means staying with the person who causes the danger. The turning point comes when Damien hurts Noah. Celine can endure pain for herself, but seeing her son bleed changes everything. She realizes that staying is no longer protection. It is teaching Noah that violence is normal. That moment gives her the courage to run. This is a powerful educational lesson. Leaving abuse is not just walking out the door. It is breaking emotional chains, fighting guilt, facing fear, and choosing safety even when the future is uncertain. Celine leaves with almost nothing, but that one decision becomes the beginning of her freedom. For viewers, the message is clear. If love makes you afraid, if apologies come after violence again and again, if your home feels like a prison, that is not love. Real love does not require you to survive it. Celine's courage reminds us that the first step toward healing is often the hardest one, believing that you deserve to be safe.